I actually sort of secretly said, but what I'm going to do, I'm going back and work at my dad's hardware store and take it over.
Vertigo is one of those films people think they fully understand, until they hear what the actors actually have to say about it. Over the years, cast members have quietly revealed small details, hidden choices, and behind-the-scenes moments that completely change how certain scenes come across on screen. Some of these things were never meant to stand out, but once you notice them, you can't unsee them. And strangely, they raise even more questions about what was really happening in the film all along. Join us as we uncover what Vertigo actors revealed about what fans never noticed in the movie. Hitchcock's darker version. Before Vertigo became one of Alfred Hitchcock's most famous films, it started as a French novel called D'entre les morts. The book was written by Pierre Boileau and Thomas Narcejac, a writing duo known for dark psychological crime stories. Their novel already had mystery, deception, and romance, but Hitchcock saw something deeper hidden inside the story. Instead of simply adapting the book as a suspense thriller, he transformed it into something much darker and far more uncomfortable. One interesting detail is that Hitchcock had already been interested in the authors before Vertigo even existed. He originally wanted the rights to another Boileau-Narcejac novel called Celle qui n'était plus. However, French director Henri-Georges Clouzot bought the rights first and turned it into the film Les Diaboliques. Hitchcock was reportedly frustrated that he missed the chance to adapt it himself. So when D'entre les morts was published, he quickly secured the rights before another director could get them. The original novel focused more on the mystery and tragic romance elements of the story. It was dark, but not in the deeply personal and obsessive way that Hitchcock's film became. In the book, the main character is emotionally troubled, but the story still moves more like a traditional suspense novel. Hitchcock, however, became less interested in solving the mystery and more interested in exploring the dangerous psychology behind the characters. That change completely shaped Vertigo. Instead of centering the story around a clever murder plot, Hitchcock focused on obsession, control, guilt, and unhealthy desire. James Stewart's character, Scotty, slowly becomes consumed by the idea of recreating a woman who no longer exists. The film spends long stretches showing Scotty controlling Judy's clothes, hair, and appearance until she looks exactly like Madeline. These scenes are slow, uncomfortable, and emotionally intense. Hitchcock wanted viewers to sit with that discomfort, rather than simply enjoy a fast-moving thriller. This made Vertigo much stranger than the original novel. Many suspense films of the 1950s focused on action, twists, or danger. Vertigo instead became quiet, eerie, and deeply emotional. The film often feels dreamlike, especially during scenes where Scotty follows Madeline through San Francisco. Bernard Herrmann's haunting music and Hitchcock's slow camera movements make the audience feel trapped inside Scotty's unhealthy fixation. What makes this even more unsettling is how much the film reflected Hitchcock himself. Throughout his career, Hitchcock became known for his fascination with blonde actresses and his desire to carefully shape their image on screen. He often controlled hairstyles, clothing, makeup, and even public appearances. Many critics later noticed that Scotty's obsession with transforming Judy closely mirrored Hitchcock's own behavior toward some actresses he worked with. Because of that, Vertigo feels more personal than many of Hitchcock's other films. It is not just a mystery story anymore. It becomes a film about obsession itself, and that darker direction is exactly what made it unforgettable. And strangely enough, the behind-the-scenes story only gets more unsettling from here. James Stewart, too old. When Vertigo was released in 1958, one of the biggest talking points was the casting of James Stewart as Scotty Ferguson. Stewart was already one of Hollywood's most famous actors, known for playing kind, honest, and relatable characters. Audiences loved him in films like It's a Wonderful Life and Rear Window. But by the time Vertigo was filmed, Stewart was nearly 50 years old. His co-star, Kim Novak, was only in her mid-20s. That age difference immediately raised concerns inside Hollywood. Studio executives worried audiences would not fully believe the romance between Scotty and Madeleine. In the 1950s, large age gaps between male stars and younger actresses were common in Hollywood films, but even then, some people thought Stewart looked too old for the role. Executives feared viewers might become distracted by the pairing instead of focusing on the story. They also worried that Stewart's aging appearance might hurt the film's box office appeal. Despite those concerns, Alfred Hitchcock strongly insisted on casting Stewart. Hitchcock had already worked successfully with him before and believed Stewart represented the perfect ordinary man. Hitchcock often liked using actors who looked approachable and trustworthy, rather than glamorous or overly dramatic. Stewart had a calm and familiar screen presence that made audiences feel comfortable. Hitchcock believed this was important because Scotty slowly changes throughout the film. If the character already seemed dangerous from the beginning, the psychological transformation would not have been as shocking. Ironically, Stewart's age ended up adding an entirely new layer to the movie. Modern viewers often notice how uncomfortable Scotty's obsession becomes, especially when he tries to remake Judy into Madeleine. Because Stewart looked significantly older than Novak, Scotty's controlling behavior can feel even more disturbing today. The relationship starts to seem less romantic and more unsettling. What may have been viewed as tragic obsession in 1958 is now often seen as emotional manipulation and unhealthy control. At the time, several critics openly mocked the casting choice. Some reviewers argued Stewart looked tired and lacked chemistry with Novak. Others felt he seemed too mature to convincingly play a man completely overwhelmed by romantic obsession. The criticism bothered Stewart deeply because he had rarely faced negative reactions during his long career. Vertigo was one of the few films where critics questioned whether he was right for the role at all. What makes the casting even stranger is the tension between Stewart's public image and Scotty's behavior. For years, Stewart had been associated with decent, likable characters. Audiences trusted him almost automatically. Hitchcock used that trust carefully throughout the film. At first, Scotty seems lonely and sympathetic. But as the story continues, his behavior becomes more controlling, obsessive, and emotionally cruel. Watching someone with Stewart's wholesome image slowly become unsettling makes the film even more uncomfortable. Today, many film historians believe this unexpected tension actually helped Vertigo. The age gap and Stewart's familiar image create a feeling that something is emotionally wrong long before the story fully reveals itself. What originally seemed like a casting mistake eventually became one of the film's most discussed and unsettling qualities. And the strange behind-the-scenes tension only got worse once Kim Novak entered the picture. Hitchcock's first choice. Before Kim Novak became the face of Vertigo, Alfred Hitchcock had someone else in mind for the role of Madeleine. He originally wanted Vera Miles, an actress he had already worked with and greatly admired. Hitchcock believed Miles perfectly matched the cool, elegant blonde image he liked in many of his leading women. At the time, he even planned to make her one of his biggest stars. Hitchcock's interest in Miles went beyond simply casting her in one movie. He reportedly saw her as the ideal Hitchcock blonde, a type of actress he often tried to shape very carefully on screen. He wanted complete control over hairstyles, wardrobe, makeup, and even public image. Miles had already appeared in The Wrong Man, and Hitchcock expected her to become the lead actress in several future projects. But those plans suddenly changed when Miles became pregnant before production on Vertigo. Because of the pregnancy, she could not take on the demanding role. Hitchcock was reportedly very upset about losing her. According to many accounts, he took the situation personally and became deeply frustrated that his vision for the film had been disrupted. Some people close to the production later claimed Hitchcock never fully forgave Miles for leaving the project, even though the pregnancy was simply part of her personal life. That is when Kim Novak entered the picture. Novak was under contract with Columbia Pictures, and the studio strongly pushed for her casting. Hitchcock did not originally want her for the role, but Columbia wanted one of their biggest stars in the film as part of a deal with the director. In many ways, Novak was forced into the movie by studio politics rather than Hitchcock's own choice. This immediately created tension between the actress and director. Hitchcock was known for being extremely controlling during productions, especially with female stars. He carefully planned every detail of how his actresses looked and behaved on screen. During Vertigo, he reportedly became obsessed with Novak's appearance. He insisted on specific hairstyles, makeup, suits, and movements to create the ghostly image of Madeleine. Hitchcock wanted her to appear cold, mysterious, and almost unreal. Novak, however, did not always cooperate quietly. Unlike some actresses who followed Hitchcock's instructions closely, Novak pushed back against his controlling style. She wanted more freedom in how she played the character, and resisted some of the strict image changes Hitchcock demanded. Their working relationship became tense during filming, with both sides frustrated by the other. Oddly enough, this real-life discomfort may have helped the movie. The emotional distance between Novak and Hitchcock created a strange atmosphere that fit the story perfectly. In the film, Judy is constantly pressured to transform herself into someone else against her own wishes. Behind the scenes, Novak herself was dealing with a director trying to shape and control her image. That uncomfortable energy seems to appear on screen throughout the movie. Many critics and film historians later noticed how the behind-the-scenes conflict almost mirrors the plot itself. Scotty's obsession with remaking Judy reflects Hitchcock's own attempts to control the actresses in his films. This makes Vertigo feel even more personal and unsettling when viewed today. And the strange creative decisions behind the movie only became more experimental from there. The Vertigo effect. One of the most famous things about Vertigo is the strange camera shot now known as the Vertigo effect, or the dolly zoom. Even people who have never seen the full movie have probably seen this effect copied somewhere else. It became one of the most recognizable visual techniques in film history. But when Alfred Hitchcock made Vertigo, the technique was something completely new. Hitchcock wanted audiences to truly feel what the main character, Scotty, experienced during his fear of heights. Scotty suffers from acrophobia, which is an intense fear of high places, and Hitchcock did not want to show this fear in a simple or ordinary way. He wanted viewers to feel disoriented and uncomfortable the moment Scotty looked down from a tall building or staircase. Regular camera shots were not enough for what Hitchcock had in mind. To solve the problem, Hitchcock and his crew worked on creating a completely new camera effect. The man most often credited with helping develop it was second-unit cameraman Erman Roberts. The idea behind the shot sounds simple today, but it was extremely difficult to pull off in the 1950s. The effect works by combining two camera movements at the exact same time. The camera physically moves backward on a dolly track, while the lens zooms inward. Sometimes filmmakers reverse the process by moving forward while zooming out. Either way, the subject in the center stays mostly the same size, while the background suddenly stretches or compresses unnaturally. This creates a warped feeling that immediately grabs attention. In Vertigo, Hitchcock used the shot during scenes where Scotty looks down staircases or from dangerous heights. The background seems to twist and pull away from him in a strange and unsettling way. The image does not look natural because human eyesight does not normally work like that. That unnatural quality is exactly why the effect became so powerful. It visually represents panic, dizziness, fear, and emotional instability all at once. Creating this shot in the 1950s was far more complicated than it would be today. Modern filmmakers can use lightweight cameras, digital tools, and computer effects, but Hitchcock's crew had to carefully coordinate heavy equipment with perfect timing. The zoom lens and dolly movement had to stay synchronized throughout the shot, or the illusion would fail. It reportedly took a great deal of planning and testing before they achieved the final look. At the time, audiences had never really seen anything like it before. The effect gave Vertigo a dreamlike quality that matched the film's strange psychological atmosphere. Hitchcock was already known for experimenting with suspense and camera techniques, but this became one of his boldest visual ideas. Over time, the Vertigo effect spread across the entire film industry. Directors all over the world began copying it to show fear, shock, confusion, or emotional collapse. Famous films like Jaws, Goodfellas, and The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring all used versions of the technique. Directors such as Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, and Peter Jackson later borrowed the effect for their own movies. What started as Hitchcock trying to visualize one man's fear of heights eventually became one of cinema's most copied camera tricks. And strangely, the movie only becomes more personal and uncomfortable from here. A personal obsession. One of the reasons Vertigo feels so unsettling is that it connects closely to the personal habits and creative patterns of Alfred Hitchcock. Over many years, Hitchcock developed a very specific type of leading actress he preferred. He often cast blonde women in his films and shaped their appearance very carefully. These actresses were not just performers in his eyes. He often treated them like parts of a controlled visual idea on screen. Hitchcock had a long history of becoming strongly focused on certain actresses. He liked to build what people later called the Hitchcock blonde image. This was not just about hair color. It included a calm expression, precise styling, and a controlled way of moving and speaking. He worked closely with actresses to shape these details so they matched his vision. Some actresses adapted easily to this process, while others found it more difficult. This pattern became especially noticeable in his work with stars like Grace Kelly, Tippi Hedren, and Vera Miles. With Grace Kelly, Hitchcock worked on films like Rear Window and To Catch a Thief, carefully shaping her elegant screen image. With Tippi Hedren, especially during The Birds and Marnie, reports from behind the scenes suggest Hitchcock became very controlling over her performance and even her personal image. Vera Miles, who was originally meant to star in Vertigo, also had a complicated professional relationship with him, as he often had strong expectations for her career direction. In Vertigo, this real-life pattern appears again in a very direct way. The character Scotty Ferguson, played by James Stewart, becomes obsessed with transforming Judy into Madeline. He does not just want Judy to look similar. He wants her to fully become someone else. He controls her clothes, hairstyle, makeup, and even small details in her behavior. The goal is to rebuild a version of a woman he lost. This process feels very close to how Hitchcock was known to guide his actresses. While Scotty's behavior in the film is clearly extreme and unhealthy, the structure of control is similar. A powerful figure tries to reshape a woman into a specific image, step by step, until she fits a vision that exists mostly in his mind. Because of this connection, many viewers and critics later started to see the film in a different way. Over time, critics began to describe Vertigo as Hitchcock's most personal and revealing film. Unlike his other thrillers, This one does not just focus on crime or suspense. It also focuses heavily on desire, control, and emotional fixation. Some film scholars have suggested that Hitchcock may not have planned this level of personal reflection. Instead, it may have come out naturally from the way he worked and thought about filmmaking. The uncomfortable part is the similarity between the creator and the character. Scotty's obsession on screen feels closely linked to Hitchcock's own tendency to shape and control the women in his films. This does not mean they are the same person, but the overlap is strong enough that it raises questions about how much of a filmmaker's personality can appear in their work without them fully realizing it. This is why Vertigo continues to feel so intense. It is not just about the story it tells, but also about the strange connection between art and the person who created it. And the film still has one more layer of discomfort hiding inside its most famous scenes. The nightmare sequence. One of the most unusual parts of Vertigo is the nightmare sequence that happens after Madeline's death. This scene shows what happens inside the mind of James Stewart's character, Scotty Ferguson, when he falls into deep emotional shock and guilt. Instead of showing a normal dream in a simple way, Alfred Hitchcock created something far more experimental and strange for its time. The sequence begins with Scotty in a state of emotional collapse. From there, the film shifts into a dreamlike world filled with broken images and changing shapes. The visuals include animated drawings, distorted colors, and faces that appear and disappear without warning. At one moment, Scotty's face splits apart. At another, floating objects and abstract patterns fill the screen. These images do not follow normal storytelling rules. They are meant to show confusion, fear, and emotional pain inside his mind. What makes this scene even more interesting is that Hitchcock had been thinking about dream sequences for a long time. Years earlier, he had worked with artist Salvador Dali on a different project called Spellbound. Dali's influence brought surreal ideas into Hollywood, and Hitchcock kept that interest in unusual visual storytelling. In Vertigo, those ideas appear again, but in a more personal and disturbing way. The nightmare sequence in Vertigo feels very different from most Hollywood films made in the 1950s. At that time, movie dreams were usually simple and easy to understand. They often looked realistic or slightly soft in style. Hitchcock broke that pattern completely. Instead of making the dream look normal, he made it confusing and visually unstable. This made audiences feel uncomfortable because they were not used to seeing such strange images in a mainstream film. There are also hidden ideas inside the imagery. The broken faces, spinning patterns, and shifting colors reflect Scotty's emotional state. He is dealing with guilt, loss, and fear after Madeline's death. The dream does not give clear answers. Instead, it shows fragments of memory and emotion. It is not meant to be logical. It is meant to feel unstable and overwhelming. A major part of the scene's impact comes from the music by Bernard Herrmann. His score uses sharp, rising strings and repeated patterns that create tension. The music does not calm the viewer. Instead, it builds pressure and makes the images feel even more intense. The sound and visuals work together to create a strong emotional reaction, even if the viewer does not fully understand what is happening. When Vertigo was first released in 1958, many audiences were confused by this scene. Some people found it too strange or hard to follow. Others even thought parts of it looked unintentionally funny because they had never seen anything like it before in a serious drama. Over time, however, film experts began to see it as one of the most creative dream sequences ever made. The nightmare scene shows how far Hitchcock was willing to push film language. Instead of staying safe with normal storytelling, he created something abstract, emotional, and visually bold. And right after this dream ends, the film pulls the audience into even more unsettling real-world locations. San Francisco locals. One of the most memorable locations in Vertigo is the graveyard and mission area where key scenes were filmed. Alfred Hitchcock chose to shoot at real places in California instead of building everything on studio sets. One of the most important locations was Mission San Juan Bautista, along with other real San Francisco and California landmarks. This choice gave the film a strong sense of realism, but it also created some unexpected reactions from local people. Using real locations made the film feel more believable, but it also made certain scenes feel more uncomfortable. The graveyard scene, in particular, has a quiet and heavy mood. It shows old buildings, weathered stone, and open, empty spaces. Because these were real places, not artificial sets, the atmosphere felt more grounded and serious. Some viewers at the time felt that this realism made the film's darker moments even more disturbing. There were reports that some locals were not happy with how their town and historic sites were shown. The film has a slow and morbid tone in many scenes, especially those involving death, obsession, and mental breakdown. Some people felt that using a real mission and graveyard for such a dark story was inappropriate. While the film was not banned or officially opposed in the area, there was still some discomfort about its use of real sacred and historical spaces. Hitchcock, however, often liked filming in places with history and strong visual character. He had a fascination with old churches, cemeteries, and buildings that looked worn down or quiet. These places helped him create a certain mood without needing heavy-set design. In Vertigo, this interest is clear in many scenes where the environment feels empty, silent, and slightly unsettling. One of the most interesting details from these scenes is the so-called fake tower problem. In the film, a tall bell tower plays a very important role in the story. However, that exact tower does not actually exist at Mission San Juan Bautista. The real mission has a much smaller structure. To create the illusion, Hitchcock used matte paintings and set extensions. These visual effects were carefully added to make the building appear taller and more dramatic than it really was. This mix of real and fake elements created a strange effect for viewers. On one hand, they were seeing real places that actually exist. On the other hand, parts of those places were completely designed in a studio or added through visual effects. This blending of reality and construction is one of the reasons the film still feels slightly unreal, even when it shows real geography. Over the years, the fake tower has also created confusion among tourists. Some people visit the mission expecting to see the tall tower from the movie, only to discover that it is not there. Even today, visitors sometimes search for the exact spot shown in the film, not realizing that part of what they saw was created through special effects. This combination of real locations and fictional additions is one of the most unique aspects of Vertigo. It makes the world of the film feel familiar, but also slightly distorted in a way that is hard to fully explain. And this mix of reality and illusion continues to shape how audiences experience the story as it moves forward. A failure. When Vertigo was first released in 1958, it did not receive the kind of praise people now expect from a classic. Instead, the reaction was mixed. Some viewers were impressed, but many others were confused or disappointed. Even critics at the time were divided about what they had just seen. A number of early reviews described the film as slow and difficult to follow. Others called it unpleasant or overly strange. This was mainly because Alfred Hitchcock had made a very different kind of thriller than audiences were used to. Instead of focusing on fast action or clear suspense, the film moved at a slow pace and spent a lot of time on emotional tension and psychological discomfort. For many viewers in 1958, this felt unfamiliar and even frustrating. Box office results also reflected this reaction. Compared to Hitchcock's earlier hits like Rear Window, Vertigo did not perform as strongly. It made money, but it was not considered a major success at the time. Audiences were more comfortable with Hitchcock's earlier style, which included clearer mysteries and more traditional storytelling. Vertigo challenged those expectations in a way that many people were not ready for. Part of the problem was what audiences expected going into the film. Hitchcock was already famous for making exciting thrillers with clear suspense and shocking twists. Many viewers expected Vertigo to be similar. Instead, they got a story that focused heavily on obsession, emotional control, and personal breakdown. The film reveals its murder mystery relatively early, which also surprised viewers who were expecting a more traditional plot structure. The ending was another major point of criticism. The final scenes are dark, emotional, and unresolved in a way that was not common for mainstream films of that time. Some audiences found the obsessive relationship at the center of the story uncomfortable. Others felt the film ended on a depressing note rather than a satisfying conclusion. These reactions added to the idea that the film was not one of Hitchcock's strongest works. Even Hitchcock himself was disappointed with how the film was received at first. He believed in the project and had invested a lot of creative energy into it, especially in its visual style and psychological depth. But the mixed reviews and weaker box office performance made him feel that the audience did not fully understand what he was trying to achieve. After its release, the film also became harder to see for a period of time because of distribution and rights issues involving Paramount Pictures. For years, it was not widely available in theaters or on television, which meant a whole generation of viewers did not grow up watching it regularly. This contributed to it fading from public attention for a while. However, things changed later. In the 1960s and especially the 1970s, younger film critics and directors began to look at Vertigo in a new way. They started to appreciate its slow pacing, emotional depth, and unusual storytelling. What was once seen as a flaw became something people admired. The same film that was once called strange or disappointing was now being discussed as one of Hitchcock's most important works. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more deep dives into classic films and the hidden stories behind them.